Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an interview with the chairman of the Godrej Group, Godrej. Mr. Godrej, at the end of part one, you seem to express a certain amount of confidence in this government's ability to take tough decisions, despite the fact there's perhaps just 9 months, maybe less left for the next elections, and despite the fact that up to now, many people feel this government hasn't shown the guts. So let me ask you, what is your impression today of the three men who take the economic decisions in India? Dr. Manmohan Singh, Mr. Chidambaram, Mr. Montague Singh Ahluwalia. Do you believe the dream team has lived up to the expectations?
Well, I think economic decisions in the last year, since Mr. Chidambaram became the finance minister, have been taken sensibly. I think 2 or 3 things have gone a bit awry. One is the rupee has been allowed to depreciate far too much. That can be a very serious problem to the inflation situation and the fiscal deficit situation. That needs to be corrected. I think in the last 2 or 3 days, I've seen a correction come about. I hope we'll see more of that. That's extremely important. The government has to use some of the foreign exchange to defend the rupee. The other thing is that they must leverage the good agricultural season that will come about, the multiplier effect it will create in other parts of the economy. If they can do that reasonably well, we can see an acceleration in growth in the second half. Now, and usually when things start getting better, there's a virtuous cycle created that can help. You know, now, of course,
can I stop you there?
Projects which are held up must be passed quickly. If we don't do that, then we won't restore growth easily.
But that's the nub. There are so many critical reforms that have been held up. I'm talking about pension, insurance, DTC, GST. All of them have been held up for years. And Paribas, the French bank, has now gone on record to say that the Indian parliament is toxically dysfunctional. Do you believe that it will now function better in the next 9 months? Or do you think that's too much to expect? Because most people, I'll add, don't believe we're going to see the reforms needed until after the elections.
It's quite possible. I don't think the GST will get through very easily. There is still some work to be done. It's a great shame, because GST would have put us into an excellent position right now, because GST adds about 2 percentage points to our growth rate, other things being equal. The other bills are important, but not to my mind critical.
In which case, can I stop you?
I think we must leverage the good agricultural season ahead.
Can I stop you? We can leverage the good agricultural season, but agriculture is only about 16% of our GDP. What gives you the basis for your confidence that this government will actually take the tough, necessary steps needed to push growth up? Because that was what you were suggesting in part one. But if Parliament is not going to push through the reforms that are critical, then what are the ways of leveraging growth back to where we need it?
Current agriculture is only 16% of our GDP, but the multiplier effects of high agricultural growth and rural income can add to both industrial output and services output, which could be in addition to the direct GDP impact of agricultural growth.
Then let me put this to you. A few days ago on this channel, Ratan Tata, one of India's most highly regarded industrialists, said that because of the inaction showed not just by the government but by our political system over the last 4 years, the world had lost confidence in India. In his speech to Parliament today, it was quite clear that the Prime Minister disagreed with Mr. Tata, although he didn't say it in so many words. Where do you stand on that issue? Because you deal a lot with foreign investors. Are they losing confidence, or is Mr. Tata exaggerating?
No, I think the perception is rather negative. I mentioned to you that the negative perception started with the retrospective amendment post the Supreme Court judgment in the Vodafone case and introducing the GAR amendments. And then we have taken a lot of action, tax action against some multinational companies. So clearly there is a strong negative perception about the Indian economy. But if we see growth accelerate and if we improve the ease of doing business, then I think it could reverse itself. So I am reasonably confident that the growth in the second half of this financial year will be better than in the first half. And if we are able to do that, then if we can bring in something like the GST in the next financial year, then the medium to long-term growth rate could be restored back to an 8% plus level.
Now, there are people who say that because Parliament is not delivering on the critical measures that are needed, because this government perhaps is constrained by politics or the fact that an election looms ahead on the horizon, that the best solution to ease India's economic crisis is an early election. The Business Standard has recommended it. Several commentators have spoken of it. Do you believe an early election is necessary, or do you think it would be a mistake?
No, I think the early elections could be beneficial because then the political uncertainty would go away. But I don't expect an early election.
Are you worried that an early election, instead of removing political uncertainty, might throw up a yet more fractured mandate and therefore a more weak and unstable government? Many people think that's likely.
That's possible. If the third front does extremely well in the election, it could lead to certain uncertainty.
Would that worry you?
Yes, definitely.
What about something else? Do you believe that Narendra Modi, if he were to become Prime Minister, would be good for Indian industry and Indian economy?
Well, any Prime Minister who liberalizes the economy, reforms the economy, would be good for the economy. Now, I don't know, Narendra Modi has done a reasonably good job in Gujarat. Maybe if he does become Prime Minister, he can do a good job at the centre, but he's not been tested at the centre. He's never been in the Union Cabinet. It's difficult to say.
Do you think that his performance in Gujarat gives you hope that he will perform well as Prime Minister if he becomes Prime Minister, or is it difficult to go from one to the other?
Well, it depends. Sometimes some people are very good as a Chief Minister of a state. They may not be as good as central ministers or the Prime Minister. One has to check, one has to see how it evolves.
Mr. Godrej, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to Devil's Advocate. Goodbye, good night.